Welcome to the U-Turn Podcast. This is the place to connect to who you truly are. We're bringing PhDs, experts, and leaders to help you elevate your mindset in your work life and in your love life so that you can see things differently and truly love your world. I'm Ashley Stahl. I'm a career expert, author, and TEDx speechwriter and booker, and I'm excited to bring you in to this week's episode. U-Turn friends, guess who? It's Ash here, and it's another week on the U-Turn podcast, and I wanted to bring Dan Martell onto the show. I have seen him amongst friends that I really admire and love, and I just thought it is time. He's a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. He's an entrepreneur, angel investor, became a highly sought-after coach in the SaaS industry after exiting 3 technology companies within a decade. And also, why wouldn't he be an Ironman athlete, philanthropist, husband, father of 2, while he's at it. And before we started recording, he mentioned that he'd been to prison maybe more than once. So we've got a lot to cover today. I want to talk about failure. He also has this book, which is all about buying back your time and getting unstuck, reclaiming your freedom, building your empire. And so there's just so much here, and I can't wait to dive in. So Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, I'm so excited, Ashley. You've built an incredible community. I'm a huge fan of your work. I was telling you before, I was like, kind of, creeping on all your profiles, reading all your stuff. And I appreciate it. I'm just really honored and I'm here to serve. So I want to make this one of the best podcasts you've ever done. So
thank you. I'm here for that. Let's go. Well, okay. So before I hit the record button, you were talking about how you look back at your life and you're kind of like, how did I get here? Because you're in such an abundant place on so many levels, like family, happiness, so many things. Take me to a time where like this didn't feel like it even existed in the lexicon of your psyche. Like this was so far away for you. Because I feel like a lot of people, they're too identified with where they are today and not where they can be tomorrow.
You actually just punched me right in the field. I don't know why that question just got to me.
I
don't know. I'm just full. I got a lot of gratitude. I got 2 amazing little boys. They're both 10 right now. They're 11. They're called Irish twins. So for 1 month a year, this month, they're the same age. And when I think back to the feelings I felt growing up, unfortunately, my parents didn't have the experience, knowledge, know how to deal with the kind of kid I was. I was, diagnosed with ADHD when I was 11 and just hyperactive and anger issues. And I was a ball of energy. I remember when I first had my first son, I just called my mom up and I said, I'm so sorry. And she's like, why? And I'm like, how did you do it? I was the second oldest of 4. And like looking at my life today and just the, like you said, abundance that I have, that I get to share with the world, like both on social, like I love part of it. I think actually like something that, I wish I would have done sooner, although I've been doing it for a long time, almost for a decade, 100,000 subs on YouTube and 1 million across all platforms. I do wish I would have started sooner because I have a lot that I want to share. That's what my philosophy is, to die empty. But when I go back and think of, the feelings of self-worth, of not having any, and rejection, when I got taken out of my home and put into foster care at 12, and just waking up in a stranger's home, like my son's 11.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine, right?
Yeah.
And, my life really turned around. I ended up in jail the first time when I was 15, got out, promised I would stay away from the old friends. And, I was into drugs and stuff. I lasted 24 hours. Just right back in it. And then that spiraled me into, doing worse things. And then about a year after that, when I was 16, I found myself drunk and high in a stolen car. And I told myself if the cops stopped me, I was going to pull a gun I had to sit next to me in a handbag, in a backpack, and let them take my life. And I took a routine. Well, I was getting gassed and there was a routine roadblock. And when the cops asked me to pull over because I didn't have a driver's license, or honestly, it wasn't my car, obviously, I just took off. And I ended up crashing inside of a house and went for the gun.
Wow. And what was that moment that stopped you from in your own life?
I was doing it. I don't know. I literally was pulling on the gun and yanking on it, and it got stuck between the seat and the kind of the strap of the backpack. And the cops just ran up to the car and opened the door and grabbed me. I wasn't even wearing a seatbelt. So like I had hit pretty hard, and I woke up the next morning sober in a jail cell wondering what my life was going to look like. Thought I was going to get 5 years. Ended up getting sent to an adult prison because of the severity of my crimes, because I'd obviously had a history. And it was there. I ended up getting in a fight with this kid over coffee of all things, and sent to the hole. So when you get in fights in prison and you're solitary confinement, and after 3 days of sitting there, 23 and a half hours locked up in a steel, concrete bed, no mattress, no, they don't even give you clothes for the first day because they don't want you to do anything bad. A lot of people take their lives, like hang themselves. And then this guard, Brian, kind of pulled me out and sat me down and literally just asked me, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "What are you doing in this place?" I was like, "Got in a fight with Kurt." He's like, "No, not that, Dan." "What do you mean?" He goes, "What are you doing in this place?" "In jail." And I go, "High-speed chase, guns." And he just shakes his head and he's like, "Dan, I don't get it. Like, I've been here for over a decade. I've seen kids come and go, and I watch you stay out of the situations and work on your school and your high school diploma and all these things. Like, if nobody's ever told you this, Dan, you don't belong here." And for whatever reason, just because of who he was, I think, or that he didn't have to pull me aside and say this to me, something clicked inside. The belief he had in me was way more than, like, I felt like the fact that I was alive, I was wasting somebody's opportunity. And here's this guy that says, like, "No, you don't belong here. And I think you actually should do something with your life, and you got to get out of here and let me help you." And 3 months later, I got released to this therapeutic community in the middle of the woods. They built it so far away from any major highway that if you tried to run away, anybody that lived on this naked stretch of road knew not to pick you up because you were one of those kids. And I went to this place, Portage. It saved my life. I did 11 months of therapy there. I learned about my story and the meaning I associated, all the trauma and challenges I'd gone through, and helped me rebuild the relationship with my family and rebuild the trust that I'd lost. And it was actually at the end of that program, I was helping the maintenance guy, Rick, clean out one of these old cabins that was built on a church camp. And in one of these rooms, there was an old 486 computer and a yellow book on Java programming sitting there, and never touched the computer. I just was like, "What's this?" And I don't know, there was just something that spoke to me. I thought it was going to be like zeros and ones and just like super crazy math. And it was English. It was like, if this, then that. And I was like, huh. And I just tapped on the computer, and 20 minutes later, I got it to say "Hello World." And I thought maybe I was a computer genius, and turned out I'm not, but didn't matter. It literally became this seed of potential and possibility of something I love to do. And I remember when I got out, I told my dad, he's like, "What do you think you're going to do?" Because I used to be into botany, if you can imagine why. And I said, "Well, I like plant, or I could do this computer thing." And he's like, "I think a garden is a great idea. You should really double click on the computer side." And that was 1997.
Wow.
So I get out. There's a small thing called the internet that just ripping and roaring. And I got into the first .com wave. And since then, built a bunch of software companies, invested in 60 plus. Like, it's bananas. Like, Ash, I get how, like, and this place, the thing I'm most proud of, I go back to Portage, the place that saved my life, all the time. I was just there 3 weeks ago. And I talk to the kid, and I share my story, and I tell them, "Get out, stay clean. I will be your biggest ally." Yeah. And that is why I'm here. All the other business stuff, that's like, I help rich people make more money in what I do, but what I love more than anything is working with at-risk youth and being an example of possibilities, and try to be other people's bride. I mean, he literally pulled me aside to share a belief in me. And we can do that. This is what's cool, actually. Every one of us can do that at any point of your life to other people. It costs us nothing, and it can literally transform somebody's life.
I love this so much. And I'm hearing two things that really stuck. Number one is like that moment of borrowed confidence. Like, you reminded me, that conversation you had with that guard reminded me of a dear friend, Brenna, who is now a PhD. She's a psychologist and for Northwestern University. I remember she was an alcoholic and friends would give her a hard time. They'd be judgmental. And I grew up with her on the school bus when we were like 9. So I was really protective of her and I knew something was wrong. I was too upset about her state to be like irritated by her not showing up or stuff like that. And I remember it was like this godly moment where I sat her down and I just decided today is the day she's going to stop drinking and I'm going to be the one to tell her, and I'm going to give her so much love, so much belief, and I'm going to transfer this confidence over to her and it's going to change her. But we can't always like get those moments, like I'm hearing that this guard, he must have really channeled something with you. And I know we all have the power to do that, but we can't bat 100, right? We're not like on our A game every day, like helping change, even as a creator, I feel like in my creation, the past decade, it's like there's a few things I've made that I feel like are truly like A+. It's like I can't always. So just the idea of a borrowed moment of confidence. And I feel like people who are listening now, it's like you have a power to put yourself in situations that you're more likely to borrow confidence, right? Like you're more likely to be seen by certain people. And it's like, what can you do? Like my grandma used to tell me about love, like put yourself in the field like a goose and let someone chase or let someone catch you. Don't be so hard to chase. So it's like, how can you keep up? Yeah. And so that's one thing I'm hearing. The second thing reminded me of when I got my master's in psychology, I ended up working in the prison system in Northern California briefly. And I'll never forget a conversation with a guy. It really sounds like you, but different. He basically said to me, he was off on, there are people there for murder. And he shot a gun, but he missed.
Were you in San Quentin? Where were you at?
I can't remember what it was called because it was like a 1-day field trip.
Okay.
Word Pelican, like does that?
Yeah, Pelican Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've gone and spoken to a lot of these different
Oh, wow.
groups.
Yeah. My master's program, they would go out there and I remember this guy sitting me down at lunch and he looked at this guy who was going to be there a lot longer and he was about to get out soon because he missed his shot. He shot his gun and he didn't murder somebody. And he said, the only difference between me and that guy who's going to be here way longer is that I missed. And it's like, it really reminds me how much we live in this force field of grace in our career. And no matter how successful we are, sometimes I think entrepreneurs, we get a lot of success and yes, we're creating it. But sometimes we let ourselves believe we're just doing all of this. And there's this element of grace and luck. Sometimes we make a good decision and it really is a good decision. Other times we made a decision and we happen to be met with luck when it changes our lives. Looking back on that moment now and this turning point for you, what were one of the most like powerful things you did to really start getting traction in this like new version of yourself that you were stepping into? Because you open up that book, you saw the computer programming, like what did you do next to really move along?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question, actually. And I appreciate, honestly, thank you for doing back when you were doing your university stuff. And I've never shared that. I was in, so it was in a cell block. So there's like 8 cell blocks, 2 stories. And we're in lockdown and I'm, looking around because like they parade students in all the time, right? Social workers, et cetera. And I'm in my cell lockdown, look out the window. And I remember there was a young lady in the group and it was a girl I'd went to junior high with.
Mm.
And she looks up and she sees me and her face just was like,
how did we get here?
And I was like, what? I just remember like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. We were in the same school from the same part of the city, like different set of decisions. But to your point on grace, man, I'm so glad that gun got done.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
I'm so glad that Brian existed in the world. I'm so glad that a place like Portage got created 2 years before I showed up.
Yeah.
I'd been to other therapy places that didn't work for me. This place was different. What I did afterwards in hindsight, like looking back, right? Like it's hard to know at the time. There was no intentionality, but looking back at like, oh, this was a good move. The first one was my dad decided to pour into me whatever I was passionate about that was positive. And that's the hardest thing. As a parent, like as a dad today, when I see my two boys, like what my dad had to go through, I feel so guilty at the time for it. But what he did that was beautiful is afterwards he said, like, hey, you're passionate about programming. You have an unlimited budget for buying books as long as you finish the book. And like that was just such a simple thing that he did for me. And because it became my new obsession. Literally, it's like I was addicted to drugs. Now I'm addicted to code. It sounds kind of nerdy. It is what it is.
Well,
I would go to the bookstore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would buy books on PHP programming and then just devour. Like I would stay up till 3 a.m. Sometimes he would like to come out and be like, go to bed. Like enough's enough. It's a school night. Cause I had to go back for one more year of high school to graduate. And so that like deciding to become really good in today's world, they talk about like high value skill, and you see all these internet people selling shit and they're like, you got to do like, you need a high value skill. It's like, I just got lucky that it was software programming in 1997, but I just allowed myself to be masterful at a thing, like all in, wasn't for the money. I just loved creating. Writing code was this therapeutic thing because I grew up in so much chaos. There was something about like the repeatability and systems and like you write the code once and as long as the computer's running, it will run for 1,000 years. It's kind of awesome. And I could show people my creation regardless of where they lived in the world. That was banana. Like I remember my dad worked in a plant for his whole life. I don't know what my dad did day to day. I never saw like the thing he did, but everything I was creating, I was just sending people links via email and they could play with the website, they could play with the apps. So that was a big thing. The other thing is I really, really curated my social circle. Like that was where I failed the first time when I got out. I literally got out, released at 8 a.m., drove 2 hours from where the juvenile detention center was back to my mom's house. Bad move in the first place. My mom was not the healthiest of moms at the time. And by 11 a.m., my old friends showed up. Dan's out. Let's go. And by 4 p.m, I was already back high, drunk, all that stuff. So second time was like curate my peer group. And this was hard because I didn't have any other friends, but I went to groups of places where they existed, right? So I went and I joined volleyball, right? The volleyball court group at the beach. I joined Al-Anon. Well, it wasn't Al-Anon. It was one of the probably went to AA for a little bit. I went to Al-Anon with my parents. I met other people in recovery. I had my best friend Josh and Nigel that also graduated. We spent a lot of time together. And I think the people, as we know today, like we are a byproduct of the people we spend time with. You know, a lot of us, we don't realize it, but we catch things, right? We become what's caught, not taught. And here's proof. It's like nobody was taught the language they speak.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, nobody sat down and taught you English. You speak English. Why? Because you caught it from your parents. The amount of catching of stuff, positivity, energy, habit that we through osmosis pick up that is unconscious at the time. You even see friend groups start to dress the same. They use the same language. It's really fascinating, especially with two young boys, seeing how they kind of morph into their peer groups. So that was huge, really curating that and honoring. And trust me, it was tough. You know, as a 17, 18-year-old trying to say no to people you grew up with that were just on their journey. There was nothing wrong with them. They still had their demons to work through, and I was on a different path. And then I would say, I mean, those were probably the two biggest things. And maybe risk taking, but here's the truth, Ashley. Like I also know how lucky I am to be born in a country that supports entrepreneurship. I'm not an idiot. I work with a lot of people that fought for their ability to live in a capitalist society that supports entrepreneurship. I think I literally was telling my wife the other day, I'm Canadian, but I'm probably the most American Canadian there is. Like, I think the American dream is one of the most beautiful things in the world. I absolutely do. I think it's created so much good for Canada, for sure, for Americans. Like, it's just such a cool concept of saying, like, if you're willing to show up, do the work, you can have it all. That's awesome. And that was the big thing I decided. You know, I knew I wanted to forge my own path. Now, risk-taking for me at that point is kind of funny because my dad used to beg me growing up. He's like, if you could just find something you're passionate about that's not illegal, I think you'd do okay with yourself.
Yeah.
And he was right. As soon as I got into software, it was like, I acted. I started companies. I started building relationships because I had nothing to lose. Like nobody expected me to do anything. So it actually was a real advantage to me that I think people that come from like a blue collar, like kind of white collar environment where there's expectation, nobody had zero expectation. Like it'd be great, Dan, if you just stayed sober. They're like, cool. Then we don't really care what you do don't create challenges in our lives. So I had that benefit. I just started taking risks. And then at 21, I decided to move out west, like make the big move, leave my home I grew up in. Best decision I ever made. And it really put me in a bigger city to be around people that thought bigger. And that's how I've been able to do what I've done. Continue to do that today.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? This episode is brought to you in part by Libsyn, the ultimate podcast hosting platform. If you're ready to start your own show, Libsyn is truly the place to start. I've been with them ever since I started the U-Turn podcast, and it's been nothing but flow. Libsyn hosts both audio and video podcasts, and even has a built-in recording feature that ensures everyone, beginner to expert, can really easily share their unique voice with the world. The stats tracking available on Libsyn will also help you understand your audience and optimize all your podcast promotion strategies. Not to mention, they have a really incredible monetization feature and direct access to brands that you know and love. Having this show has truly changed my life, and I hope it's changed yours too. If part of your dream includes starting up your own podcast, go to libsyn.com, put in our promo code UTURN, and you're going to get up to 2 months of free podcasting service. What are you waiting for? Make your own U-turn and start your podcast today. Just go to libsyn.com and use our promo code YOUTURN for 2 months of free services. Wow. I have so many thoughts. Well, first of all, like going way back retro to your conversation with Brian, I feel like his name was Brian, correct? The guard?
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people who sometimes with their mental health, like we know mental health isn't doing as well at least in the United States, the stats are up for suicide rate, all these things. I think a lot of people question their worthiness. Like, do I deserve to be here? What's the point of being here? And I get it. It's like a really hard planet to be on. Like, not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone is meant to be, an executive. I know some people are probably waking up being like, what is this about? And I feel like moments like Brian, anyone can show up for somebody like that. And it's like, that guy changed your life. My friend Brenna never picked up a drink again, and she changed her life that day.
So beautiful.
Yeah. And so it's like, we all have the power to do that. And then it's the question of like, well, what is worthiness? Like, if Brian looks back on his life and I'm sure he knows what kind of impact he had on you.
It was hard to find him, as you can imagine. Yeah. I did find him.
Exactly. It's like, well, is your life enough if you know that you made one person completely change and ripple effect on so many lives? I imagine that Brian would say, yeah. When I look back, if I simplified all of my impact and I said, because I was here, and I'm not going to have a God complex about myself, but because I had that conversation with Brenna, she never drank again. And now she has a full practice of therapy clients and all these people she's helping, healing. It's like, it kind of takes this whole worthiness thing. And it's like, anyone listening today, you have the power, whether it's somebody in your family, it's somebody you have influence over, to have one conversation. And if you tune into your energy, if you choose the right words, there is that power that can happen there. So like, I just love that whole idea around worthiness and like mattering. A couple other things I heard you say is, number one, just being masterful. And I love that you didn't say, because I talk a lot about zone of genius. Like my book's message is don't do what you love, do what you are. And so a lot of my work is around who are you? And where do you really feel like you can contribute? I love that you didn't even have that pressure on yourself with the coding. You were like, I'm just going to go all in Donkey Kong on this shit and like see what it does. And that's the cool thing about life, is it's an experiment. Like we get to create it as we go. And so the fact that you were able to just focus on being masterful, I feel like that's a nudge for anyone listening. It's like, if you're feeling stuck and lost, take the pressure off, pick something, if you're feeling like you're in limbo, I don't know, make a commitment, see what feedback the universe gives you, course correct later, but going all in is so powerful. You also talk about curating peers. And I also heard you talk a little bit about saying no, like to your past, to past versions of yourself that have expired, and it's so uncomfortable to do that. It's so uncomfortable to say no to people or places that are comfortable, for better or for worse. And then the final thing I heard you say was that geography matters. Like, where you are has a profound influence on what you can or can't do. It's almost like, I don't know, for me, I lived in New York City, the winter, like it killed me. I went to graduate school in London, the rain killed me. Being in the sunshine, I am like solar powered, and it is a game changer. So going back to curating your peers, I feel like, I don't know if it was being at the Pentagon and training to be in the agency that I was taught intuition, beyond just being an intuitive spiritual being. I feel like I had to learn like what incongruence looks like, all these different intelligence skills to make sure that I didn't like die in a dumpster if I was out in the field. I feel like that was a gift for me, but I know a lot of people struggle to kind of choose who are they going to surround themselves with. There's also these sticky feelings of like, I don't want to have an agenda. I don't want to be inauthentic. So it's like, how do you recommend for somebody listening right now that maybe they're feeling like, I don't have a community around me that's expanding me? My first advice would be like, expand yourself, like read the books, like be someone that you'd want to hang out with. But obviously from there's the tactical side of like, how do we pick someone? And I love that you talk about volleyball because that's so low hanging fruit. Like, you play any sports, you join a league, like, but are there any other things you can share around curation and choosing people for people who are listening who maybe struggle with that?
A lot, Ashley. And two things I want to just expand on that you shared that is just so, I love the way you listen, by the way. You're great at this. This is so fun. My buddy Josh says it best. He says, I believe that every child is one caring adult away from being a success story. And I just think that a lot of adults don't realize how big of an opportunity they have when they see a kid, even if it's not their own kid, to just, as you said, speak into them or share borrow their confidence or, just breathe the self-worth into them. Like, most kids don't realize what they do. They just do. And then it's like for somebody to say like, whoa, that's impressive.
Right.
Right. And I think like, that's huge. And just that whole idea of power of belief, right? I believe in God. And when God speaks to me and I see something that is admirable, right? It doesn't matter if it's a meal I just ate to customer service that's impressive to the way somebody shows up in a, client service experience. I always tell them, because I think very rarely we might think it, but we don't express it. And it's just such a beautiful habit and personality trait, I think, to encourage and foster. In regards to the network of people, so I got lucky. I read a bunch of technical books when I was younger, but I didn't read any business books till I was like 23, which is kind of bananas because I probably read 150 software architecture, database books, but never a book on personal development or improving my business chances. And that's probably why I failed a couple times before I finally figured it out. But one of those early books was Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi.
Love
right?
Keith.
So I would say that book, my first book I ever read though was actually Love is the Killer App by Tim Sanders. And in his book, he even talks about your network is your net worth. So that seeded the idea of like, oh, I really need to curate and be intentional about there's one thing to say no to negative conversations and people and all that stuff. It's a different game to actually say, who am I missing in my peer group to help influence me to behave and strive for a higher level? So that book, Tim Sanders' book, and then follow up to that maybe 3 months later, Never Eat Alone. But I mean, Never Eat Alone really messed me up, actually. Like I was more introverted back then. And when Keith's writing about, for business partners, a business associate, you should invite them to like a spin class or Zoom. I think he said Zumba or something. And I'm sitting there going like, I can't even talk to people. And you want me to invite them to a class where we're both going to sweat? Like, why would anybody do this? Okay. Fast forward to today. No joke. Actually, I don't take meetings with people unless we're hiking up a mountain. Amazing. I have a standing meeting every Tuesday, 6:30 a.m. called Knox Mountain in Kelowna, BC. Anybody in the world, if you listen to this, you're invited to come if you want. And that is the only way. I don't do meetings. I don't do lunch meetings. We do that first because I had a mentor once say, hey, I want to meet with you for coffee at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And when I asked him why 6 a.m., after the fact, I showed up, suit and tie. He goes, because if you didn't show up, I knew you weren't serious. Yeah. And that's my filter, right? But the people that I invite on hike and the people that become near and dear friends of mine, there's no, like, it's not about size of success. Cause I think some people, they think, oh, if I'm not as successful, Dan won't talk to me. And that's just so silly. Like I have friends, my best friend Coop that I run with every day. He's 27 and, he's in his early part of his entrepreneurial journey. So it's like, but then I have a lot of friends, private jets, and they live in gated communities. And, so there's different levels to it, but what they all have in common for me is they're just generous people.
Yeah.
Like they're helpful. Like they got heart. Like it's never been, none of them, it's about the money. It's about expression. It's about creating. And when in the subtitle of my book that a lot of people, had a hard time with and create an empire, because they're like, well, I don't want to create an empire. It's like, hey, Ashley, is it okay if I just do this thing? All I'm saying is I want you to create a life of unlimited creation you never have to retire from. That's what empire means to me. And every one of those people, they have the same philosophy of like, I'm here for a short amount of time. Okay, we're on Earth, call it, look at the data, it's 80 years. Most people don't want to believe it, or they think they're going to live to 150, which is fine if they do. But if you just look at the data, like it's a blip in the whole grand scheme of things. And all my friends are people that are here. Many of them we talked about before we recorded, and they're all people you would absolutely say like they're living life. They've got a desire to create massive impact, and they're generous with their time, and they know how to have fun and be playful, and they honor themselves. Like, I love that you said you're solar. I think you should create a t-shirt that says solar, Ashley solar powered. And I'm okay with that. And I'm not saying that if you love New York, you can love New York, but it's just, if everybody just leans in to what they know makes them happy, and then try to find people that also want to share in those experiences. Like when anybody comes to my town I live in and experiences the community, we were talking about Joe earlier that came, you can ask Joe, like he was blown away by integrated it all in. Like I just, I was just wake surfing before this with my entrepreneurial friend, and two of them, I sit on the board and I'm an investor in their company. So like I'm a board member, they're my best friends, I mountain bike and wake surf with them, and we talk business all the time. I want that all the time. And that's kind of what I've created. I just keep curating the people. But again, it's not easy. When I travel, I organize lunches and dinners. I always invite 6 people to each one of those, a list for different cities. Like I was saying, I got to get to Miami. We'll co-host the dinner. I think we'll have a lot of fun, right? I'll bring my peer group and yours. And I just think adding a little bit more intentionality, and definitely the Bible, I would say, is Never Eat Alone. That book really messed me up, because I was like, ooh, but give it enough time and you wake up and you live a rich quality life.
I love that. And those of you who are listening, who are thinking about networking as an introvert, like Dan shared, I feel like when I lived in DC, it was like spray and pray with business cards. And I know that networking approach is not for everyone. Put the pressure on yourself at most to just walk away knowing a few kindred spirits, like quality over quantity, right? Because I know that people might read that and feel what you felt, even though it's such a great book too. I also love what you share about like being a supporter. Like, how many times do we think about a compliment for someone and we don't share it? That's been a practice that I've really worked on, is just sharing it. And I also heard you talking about just this idea of initiating. Like one of my best friends, Amanda Bucci, I
love Amanda. It's literally, we're like, yes.
That's so funny.
I bet if we went on our Facebook mutual friends, it'd be like 380.
Yeah, that's so funny. I love Amanda so much. And I was her first, she would consider like her first adult friend, because she was like someone who, in who she is, initiating was really hard. So when she had someone around her, it was like such a love language that I'd be like, hey, are you free for lunch this day? And so I think if someone maybe has a story going on in their head of like, oh, how am I supposed to get these people to go to Zumba or, spin class or whatever? It's like remembering what a gift initiating can be. Another thing that I did when I came to New York, I'm like, I don't really know that many people. I know a few. I'm like, I'm going to make a dinner reservation for 8. And it's going to be in a month and a half. And I got to fill all 8 seats. And I didn't have to even offer, I'm happy to buy people dinner. I was just like, hey, I have this reservation. A few amazing women are coming. You should really come. And every woman that I met that was really amazing, just one woman is from the grocery store. Another woman, I held her hand on an airplane because she was afraid of flying. And she tapped me and told me like I have severe flight anxiety. I'm like, no problem. We ended up becoming friends. She came to the dinner. and ended up later telling me her dream is to be a chef. And she was the chef for a dinner party I hosted in Fort Lauderdale. So it's just like when you're open, you don't need to be like pushy, but just available. It's like so much can happen. And so when I made my little reservation, I was like, all I need to do is just pick people and invite them. And when you have momentum in your energy, like, well, these other people are coming in, it'd be nice for you to come and we have room at the table. And it was such a cool way for me to make friends. And I think initiation is a form of generosity, with other people.
It is such a low-hanging fruit because some people are worried about carrying the conversation, right, Ashley? But like I have like a handful of friends. If I just want to sit back, I invite them.
Yeah.
And they literally, buddy Curate, holy moly, I love him. You just put him at a table, it's good. Richard, it's like literally these people will carry a table. So you don't have to be on, and the amount of reciprocity and just appreciation, because most people left to themselves, they're just going to stay home. Right. But here's what I'll just share this real quick. I was in Vegas speaking at an event and I had done like 3 podcast days in a row. So I was like, emotionally, I just gave it on. Like, I say for me is like 5 in person in a city. And I done 3. Then I gave a keynote and get at my hotel room. And there's a speaker dinner plus the after VIP party. And it's 6 p.m. and I'm laying in my bed, and it was a very comfortable bed at the Wynn. I was just like, I'm not going to go. Like, I am going to stay. I'm going to pass out early because I get up early and I'm going to recover. And I'm laying in bed and I hear myself, because this is the worst part about putting out content. For again, your life will not change if you stay in. There's no magic that can happen. I'm staying. If I stay in bed, I can guarantee one thing. Nothing will change. And I'm like, shut up, Dan. This feels so good, this comfortable bed. I'm just like wanting to stay in. And I was in this like good devil on each shoulder moment. And I jumped out of bed, I put shoes on, I ran down the hallway. I'm like, okay, I'm going to the dinner. That night, I'm at the after party. I didn't stay long, but I sat down and I got introduced to a guy that's partnering with Mike Tyson and on some software stuff. And he asked me if I do a call with them.
Right. I love that.
Magic. Like, who am I? I grew up in a small town in Eastern Canada. I'm doing a call with Mike. Like, these are things that when my dad hears, I think my dad thinks I'm full of baloney. Yeah. Like, I literally think my dad looked at me as if I'm lying, which I get it, because he still sees me as a 13-year-old troublemaker. Yeah. But even for me, I pinch myself. So even the fact that people create the space, like you've created that space to bring these women together, the secondary third effects of what you do, and it's just so beautiful.
Right. Well, it's like, if you want more magic, just have more conversations. It just moves the energy around so much of your life. And it doesn't have to be high level, right? Like, I just talked to somebody in the peanut butter aisle at the grocery store the other day. It's like, life can be so much lighter and more expansive, and you really never know what's around the corner. And that's one of the best things about life. I feel like I could talk to you for so long. I haven't even gotten into your book, and I just want to let everybody sit with this, because I feel like you've shared some things where if somebody just takes one of them and they really go in on it, whether it's like full mastery, curating your group, make the reservation, like something, I think there's just so much more fulfillment and joy and success on the other side. We're going to have you back on at some point, because you're just like full of information. Or I'm going to have to get my ass to Canada on a hike with my microphone.
No, I'm coming to Miami. I'm going to come to Miami. I'm bringing the crew.
Okay, cool. Okay. So I know you have, so many different resources. Where can someone who's listening get started?
Yeah. So the book I wrote is literally, I think I've been teaching these frameworks for 17 years. So what people that know me from the software space and just online, I've always admired is just the velocity of stuff I get done. And the reason why is I understood a long time ago that the time is a constant, and the only difference in regards to output that anybody can create is leverage. Mm-hmm. So buy back your time is this principle, I call it the buyback principle, which states we don't hire people to grow our business. We hire people to buy back time in our calendar. If you do the second, you actually get the first, but if you get the first, you definitely don't get the second. And it's a book for leaders. A lot of people think it's a productivity book, and it is. It's the best. Honestly, it's one of the best productivity books. Why do I know that? Because I've read about 75. It's also an incredible leadership book, because I learned a long time ago, even if I teach you how to get into a position to have your time and you have now people, if you're a horrible leader, which most CEOs are definitely, most entrepreneurs are crazy. Let's just get that out of the way. And if they don't learn the traits that are stopping them from creating or co-creating with their team members, then they'll always hit what I call the complexity ceiling, right? It became a Wall Street Journal bestselling book, and I teach people how to build businesses they don't grow to hate. And that you can just get at buybackyourtime.com. But my favorite place to interact with people is Instagram. And the thing that chapter 6 of my book is how to hire an administrative assistant. But even if you're an executive and you want to hire a house person, like I have Betty who works in our homes, and she's our house manager. So like the buy principle applies to non-entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. A lot of my clients buy the book for their executive teams because like buying back your time to go to the gym so you don't clean your house, meal prep. These are all low-hanging fruit. But if people want that, I actually have an internal, actually, I'll give it to your audience, is a Google Doc, which is my internal SOP. I'll give everybody listening the executive assistant one, but just follow me on Instagram, follow me and just send me a message saying EA, and I'll send you like the Google Doc directly, just standardize a little bit. And if you ask nicely, I probably would send you the house manager one because it's pretty big. That one actually, like when you can have somebody support you at work and in your home, so that you can show up and only do things that light you up, that support your dreams. That's how we cycle and create. That's the thing. That's why I had to write the book, because I had too many people. I almost wrote the book to buy off my time, explaining myself over and over and over again to my friends. Yeah, those are the best places. But I'm on all social platforms, and YouTube, I've got 800 videos. Actually, I've put 800 videos out.
Wow, you're a machine. I want
to die empty. That's my mission.
You will. I mean, I don't have 800 YouTube videos in me, and that is incredible. So, I mean, everyone listening, I would love to hear how this impacted you. I know it did. And thank you again, Dan, for being here.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning into the U-Turn podcast. And thank you again so much for our sponsors. We are here because of you. And to our listeners, thank you for checking out our sponsors. We always pick people and brands that we trust and we believe in. And just for listening to the show, writing your reviews on the Apple app, and just being willing to make your own U-turns. We'll see you next week.